Welcome. In today's video, we're going to go through the entire auxiliary battery setup in our SquareBody Chevy, everything I used and how I set it up to make it as easy for you guys as possible. So let's get into it. Before we fully get into the install, I'll go over everything we got. The first thing is the 20 amp DC to DC charger. This will charge the 100 amp hour battery while we are on the road or on the trail. The solar charge controller is going to be used with our 100-watt solar panel to charge the battery while we are at camp with the Bluetooth setup, so we could always see our levels without checking our battery monitor. Our battery monitor will tell us how much time we have till an empty battery and the percentage and just the health of the battery and everything. So this is good to have. I got these solar panel leads that will go to the charge controller so we can hook up our 100-watt solar panel and keep this inside the toolbox. I got all the wire needed for the install. Over here I got a few fuses to have in line just to help protect everything. Then I got a fuse block with 6 kind of options, I guess, for like the fridge and any other power setups with the fuses with that. And then I have a couple 12-volt hookups. We're just going to start off with running a 12-volt to the back of the truck so we could power the fridge. And then just as things go on, we can add in more and more circuits to it. That's why I got a 6 setup panel fuse block. Then from here is our Vatrer 100 amp hour LifePO4 battery. This should be more than enough since we only stay stationary at camp for a day or two at the most. This will be more than enough to charge any of our accessories, run our fridge, anything like that while we are at camp. Then I will be building a smaller type box setup in the back of the toolbox, so then we could hook all of this up and we'll go into wiring all of this. But the first step is let's build our box in the toolbox of the truck. All right, we went over everything that will be going into this auxiliary battery setup, and here's the toolbox we're going to be using. I'm going to be sectioning off a portion of this and then drilling a hole in the bottom of the toolbox and into the bed to run all the wires. I already have grommets for all that, and then I'll just figure out a way to keep it water and dust resistant or proof so this setup doesn't get too messed up while we're out on the trail. But I will build a wall on this side and a wall on the back side to hold everything, along with some legs on the bottom here to have the battery sitting on that so it has proper airflow and everything around it, so all of that stuff stays nice and cool. And then the first circuit we're going to run is a 12-volt to this hole in the bed. I have a plate to cover this, and then I'm going to put the 12-volt in on the plate and screw it down right here so we can run our fridge or plug in our fridge right here and run it to a slide somewhere on the bed of the truck. But it'll give us some auxiliary power and use up one of the spots on the fuse block. All right, I got the wood secured down with a few screws. It's really on there, so that won't be going anywhere. I got the ratchet strap in place, and the width of the ratchet strap actually fits the channels for the carry handle on the battery perfect, so that works out well. The next step is I'm going to install the charge controller right here, and then I will do the fuse block right here, and then install the shunt for it somewhere around here. And then afterwards, I'll put the DC to DC charger right here, all in place. I'll get it all kind of mocked up and then fully screwed in there and secured. Then from there, we could start running wires. Well, this is where we're at so far. I got the DC to DC, the fuse block, the charge controller, and the shunt all put in. I got some wires ran. I got the leads to the solar charger controller already put in, and the positive and negative going to it. And then I got the negative for the fuse block going to the shunt. I will explain this shunt and the battery monitor after I have everything hooked up. It's a actually fairly easy. I thought it was confusing in the beginning until I got it figured out. But the plan now is just kind of hook up everything. I'm going to do the positive to the fuse block. I'm going to run the positive and negative for the DC to DC. And then from there, we just need to start running wires from the engine bay. I'm going to run the wire for the battery monitor from the cab, and I'll have a spot in the cab for it. And then I'm going to run the ignition for this also from the engine bay, along with the positive negative power wires to the DC to DC. And then from there, once I have all the wires in here set up and good to go, then I'm going to start running the wires to the 12 volt in the back of the bed over there. So that's kind of the plan at the moment. I'll just start hooking up more wires, and then if I run into anything, I'll give you guys updates, and we'll just keep trucking along on this. All right, you guys, we are completely done with this setup for the auxiliary power and the SquareBody. So I'll go over this one more time just so you guys can easily replicate it. And I will have links to everything I have used down in the description of the video, so you could easily get it and do this setup without any issues. We'll start off with the charge controller first. This is the Wanderer 30 amp charge controller. And all I did was ran the negative from the charge controller to the negative, the P minus on the shunt. And then I ran the positive from there to the battery. And then here is the leads. They're 10-foot leads for our 100-watt Devo solar panel. And from here, this is our fuse block. I only have one circuit or setup on it for now that goes to the 12 volt in the corner of the bed. And all I did there was take the negative, hooked it up to the P minus of the shunt, and then the positive to the battery. And then for the DC to DC, I ran from the starter battery on the truck, just the positive negative, but right when I jumped off the positive of the starter battery, I put a inline fuse so it can be protected and I won't short out this DC to DC charger. I'd rather pop the fuse than burn up the charger. So I ran from there underneath the truck, through the bed, into the toolbox, onto this side, just the positive negative. And then from here, I ran the positive to the positive of the battery and the negative to the P minus of the shunt. And then from there, that's my 3 grounds. So for the fuse block, the charge controller, and the DC to DC. And then from the B minus, you run a negative to the, or a ground to the negative of the battery. And then this negative, I grounded out the battery just like your starter battery underneath the hood. So I found a spot on the frame and I ran this to it and bolted it on there and then threw a coat of paint on it so it doesn't rust out my frame or anything. I'll give you a little demonstration of how the battery monitor works, but first let's go over everything that's on the screen. The first thing is it'll tell you how many amp hours your battery is, which you can set that. I just have a 100 amp hour battery at the moment, so it's at 100 amp hours. But if you have a 200, 300, you know, however big your solar setup is, you can use it. You could set it to that. Then it tells you your percentage right next to it. We're at 100%. Below the 100% is the time it would take to run the battery down to 0 if you had a constant load on it. Then below the battery itself, it has your voltage of your battery. Next to that, it tells you how many amps you're either bringing in or pulling out of it. And then same thing as wattage. I'm going to be running this in the glove box because we'll be using it, but not constantly. So I figured a good spot would just be in the glove box. So while we're on the road or on the trail, I can monitor the battery while we're moving. But now that I've gone over that, I'll kind of show you guys. I'll plug in a device to our 12 volt. So you guys can see how this kind of works. All right, here is the 12 volt that I installed in the back corner of the bed. I'll plug in the 12 volt plug there. Go here, the fridge turned on, but turn on again. It's at 55 degrees at the moment, but I'll just bring it down to the lowest setting, which is 32. So now that we have the mini fridge going, let's go back up to the battery monitor. All right, as you can see with the battery monitor, it says 99 amp hours, so it's gone down just 1 amp hour. The voltage is 13.3. It's pulling. It'll constantly be fluctuating, but it's saying 2.33 amps at the moment and 30 watts. And then it tells me I have 41. You know, that'll keep moving until it actually levels out. But, you know, 40 to 42 minutes of battery until this battery would be empty. But, you know, that's with the little compressor running in the fridge. If the, you know, when the fridge gets down to temperature, it'll turn off and that time will go up. All right, as you can see, we are pulling positive amps and watts, and then the battery is fully charged. Since we're fully charged, the DC to DC will just put it on a float charge for the lithium battery. So it's kind of, you know, just keeping it at 100%. It's not throwing the full amps at it, so it won't damage the lithium battery that we have for our setup. But as you can see, this is kind of how it works for the battery monitor, and it should work the same way while having a solar panel hooked up and the truck off. As you guys can see, an auxiliary battery setup is actually painless to install. So don't be hesitant on doing it. If you want an auxiliary battery setup so you can stay at camp longer, just do it. You shouldn't have any issues if you follow the steps in this video. And thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Have a good one, you guys. Bye.